Right, if you permit me an essay, Cropper mentions Kant as the diminutive source from which a grand defilement of rationality begins, a decadence among the unwitting or unknowing psyche of all who understand philosophical works rationally. These minds are corrupted upon sophisticated literary tropes found within Kant's texts. Cropper states and stakes this claim as a somewhat ubiquitous disease which has infiltrated the entire modern culture and political apparatus and is promoted without check from within our universities, faculty, and curriculum. And without stating the specific discourse within Kant's work and without stating the difference among the rational tradition and Kantian effacement of rationality, objectivists would have us ubiquitously accept their origin of non-rationality to be originating from a text with which postdates that which is founded upon the rational tradition itself. Now, the case for departure from pre-Kantian rationality into post-Kantian objectivity is not rationally made, but it's intelligently made. It's intelligible, but it's done via an arc. And so, without scrutinizing differences between pre-Kantian discourse and Kant's texts, can one rationalize putting Kant's work under erasure or departing from it? In other words, Cropper does not discuss specific examples of Kant's work to give virtue to abandonment. Instead, Cropper gives us an essay on disdain towards literary devices such as the turning nature of the trope and metaphor, as well as a socio-political history, which he is not at any ease. A case for departure from rationality into Kantian non-rationality is not founded in Kant's work, but it is said to be expressed by his work, by Mr. Cropper. Now, an ache sprouts from Cropper, but it's not a critique of transcendental ontology proper. Cropper supplies no scrutiny, no deconstruction of Kant's noumena, unknowable reality expressing sense data, and Kant's phenomena, the consciousness from which the sense data is distinct. Cropper grants no analysis of the psyche, nor offers any ulterior approach to, nor rational argument for, nor against issues concerned in transcendental ontology in general. In general, instead, he offers his supposed sovereign self up entirely to Ayn Rand's interpretation of the ill effects of Kant. So Cropper avoids making a distinction between the origin of the world, the pre-comprehended question of being, and being in the world, the making of a propositional concept of being, which Kant, with a long line of predecessors, does do this, and people have done that since. So this is Kant's contribution, whether it's accepted or it's looked at as a detriment. Now, Cropper asks us to walk around Kant instead of traversing through the text, and ironically, in the asking us to blame, avoid, ignore, and walk around a text, it begs us to know what the substance of the knowledge is that we would be best to avoid. So objectivists tend to sum transcendental ontological discourse as useless, that they simply focus on the anterior of the consciousness as a principle-based ideal of rhetoric. So while guiding and grounding his viewers within litmus citations of early American political figures, Cropper attempts a distillation of virtues as a supplement for objective rationalism, as well as echoing Randian ideology or objective realism. So Cropper does this via a temporal arch over the work of Kant instead of a navigation throughout the works of Kant. This is to say that Kant's contribution to transcendental ontological thought is what's asked by Cropper for us to avoid. So Cropper will skip from the texts of founding fathers as rationalists over the figure of Kant down to Ayn Rand's textual ideality of objectivism proper, whilst uh, positing Kant as a figure distinctly at the center of his disdain. So, although Cropper points to a few cherry-picked citations of Kant's text, Cropper disdains Kant as a figure in modern history, not Kant's work proper. So, to use a simile within a metaphor for your psyche's pleasure, Cropper sternly affixed to Ayn Rand's back, like Yoda is to Luke Skywalker, notes her running down the path of Aristotle and stabbing the pole vault onto Kant, departing from the founding fathers' rationalism and arching over 2 centuries of thinkers and landing on objective realism. Now, Cropper liked the activity so much that he relives it indefinitely. Um, Now, Kant as a figure, as opposed to Kant as a name title over many specific texts, is what is disdained by Cropper. Kant, as figure, is disdained by a disdainor who always notes himself safely under the YouTube title Mr. Cropper. Now, Mr. Cropper, like Mr. Smith and Mr. Anderson in The Matrix, poses and posits himself as a figure of echoing opposing ideals. So instead of ignoring Kant altogether or putting Kant's text under scrutiny and then erasure, Cropper is in lockstep with Ayn Rand, and posits Kant as a figure of their opposition. Then the arched approach over the figure of Kant requires an inertia in order to run anterior to Kant's figure. So this anterior running presses the figure of Mr. Cropper naively to himself into a diminutive periphery in opposition away from the object of his disdain. So the title Mr. Cropper is safe, but the figure Mr. Cropper within the anterior press is plagiaristically similar to the stark and starched and clean, untarnished figures of Ayn Rand's books, Howard Roark and John Galt. Now, her characters run anterior about their literary antagonists as well, which express disdain, but her characters express little or no guilt. Now, since the characters of Rand's works do not work through empathy with socialist ideology or ideality, but press anterior via arching over away from socialist dialogue, the characters lack socio-civil historic sophistication and are subsequently more artificial. They're less robust than characters of more trite books on capitalistic failures and triumphs. So Randian characters are missing many emotional dimensions because the characters are ideal figurines or figures of capitalistic ideals in and of themselves singularly. And so the characters are often missing guilt and satisfaction, and they're two-dimensional. They're as two-dimensional as they literarily fulfill their ideological function. So my monologue here underscores the self-titling habit of Mr. Cropper while underlining his character movement and dimensional absence. As Cropper is form-fitting himself into a heroic YouTube figurine of capitalist ideality objectively, he touts himself as an embodiment of objective rhetoric. This is why Mr. Cropper argues against the Kantian ideal rather than Kant's discourse itself. Now, Mr. Cropper maintains a supplemental orbit about his primary antagonizing figure. So he's centrific around Kant, around his disdain here. So to release the man, Mr. Cropper, from the fabled YouTube Mr. Character of Mr. Cropper, the association between Randian objectivism and Cropper's adherence to her figure's characters must be outlined so that literally the literal idealism attenuated is notably less robust than the actual sophistication that Mr. Cropper has, but masks. So this process requires Cropper to note the difference between his sophistication and his disdain for sophistry in practice. That's my essay. That's what I have to say.